Someone asked, how do you choose what to work on? What are the considerations? That was a good question. I think the basic principle is you already know at some level what you want to do. Just like seeing babies come out and like already having, when we're born, we already have a lot of drive, a lot of nature. Whether you call it a soul or just like your character or what, there's a unique direction, a unique perspective. And yeah, like just by acting naturally in the situations that one's in, a person starts to reveal who they are. And I'm not sure if we all have like a unique purpose for being here, but it might as well be true. Okay, I know that's okay, so if you it's kind of a mathematical trick. If you assume that a solution exists and give it a name, X, and then start reasoning, working out what you can tell about X from the assumption that it exists, then often that leads you to finding X. Or if there is no such X, then reasoning on it eventually leads you to a contradiction. Yeah, okay, it didn't exist. Whereas if you don't start by giving it a name and having something to work with, you're often there's no direction to go in. So like, start by assuming that there's a purpose, there's a direction, there's something for you to be working on, and then figure out if that exists, what does it look like, and you might find that there's multiple solutions. Fine, then yes, you're in the situation of choosing amongst them, but that's a better situation of choosing like among things that are all like ideal things that satisfy you, that you have the inner drive for, rather than multiple things that you feel like maybe someone else would think you're supposed to do or whatever. So yeah, like come from your inner self and make a decision using your entire self. It's popular to like equate I with like a particular region of the brain, right? Like I am that which reasons and speaks, and the rest is just like a meat machine that I'm carrying around, and I don't find that a useful perspective. Because the verbal reasoning it can produce persuasive arguments for and against lots of things, and it's easy to be convinced by that. But it's not always based in reality. It's like ChatGPT, right? Like people get convinced by it because it like is grammatical, but it doesn't necessarily actually have a correspondence to what you would actually be doing. So yeah, when you're working on something, you're there, you're doing it. Choose something to work on that feels good to you to be doing, not just something that you would like to have done, because it's easy to look at the hypothetical end product and think, yes, I want to have made that, and then like come up with verbal reasoning about this is a good thing for me to make because it'll win me social approval, it'll be financial maybe, like and all that's nice, but it doesn't substitute for like actually feeling like you're doing something you want to be doing while you're doing it. So yeah, choose based on what you want to be doing, and the easiest way to evaluate that is by doing it. Like actually physically start various projects and see which ones, when you're working on them, you feel like, yes. And yeah, so you can try and minimize the gap between like having an idea and thinking that something is something you might want to work on and actually experiencing how it is to work on it. Because when the idea is just hovering in your mind, you're just doing the verbal reasoning on it. You're just like, it's easy to convince yourself that the idea on its own is amazing, that you have to actually put that in contrast with the experience to actually get something you can really make a decision on. You don't. The skill of visualizing what the experience of working on something will be is a skill that you can develop. So like you can get to a point where you've evaluated enough projects by actually starting them, actually experiencing them, that you can contemplate a project and just through your embodied imagination, not just the verbal imagination, but through the embodied imagination, sense what's the experience of working on it and make a decision based on that. But that skill has to be developed by actual experience. So like if you have it, great. If you don't have it, work on developing it by starting projects and experiencing the process. The best way really to decide what to work on is that you're already working on it spontaneously, because it's just like completely coming out of the natural who you are, what you want to do. And sometimes this happens. Sometimes I'm just like, I have this idea and it's driving me, and like it's easier. The easiest thing to do is to just be making it than to try and like do something else like this. Yeah, it's like that's why I ended up making games rather than like doing maths research, because I was doing a PhD in maths and then just like I was making games. I was like, but this is the thing that like I'm working on. But here are these games that just spontaneously are popping out of me. It's, and I shouldn't assume, based on that at that time the spontaneous natural thing for me to do was make games, that will always be the case. Like, I might reach a point in my life where I'm making games because I think that's what I do, and actually, like, what my spontaneous desire is something else. And yeah, I was evaluating that for a while recently because I was feeling stuck and not knowing what I wanted to really be working on. But yeah, I found a different solution. But it's good to have your mind open to what the possible solutions, like, yeah, point. Let go of limiting beliefs. If you have an assumption that you're making that reduces the possibility space of what you can work on, then that might be the thing that is keeping you stuck. So in this case, I had the assumption that a game I was working on had to be a new game. And eventually I worked through it and I figured out I have this limiting belief that it can't be the same thing I've done already. It can't be a sequel. It has to be something new. When I let go of that, it was clear to me that I wanted to work on Single Pulse again. And that's how it came about that I'm doing a sequel. And also, like, I was spontaneously working on that, even though I had the belief that it couldn't be my main project. It was a thing that I was naturally going and just doing a bit more work on, just like tweaking a little bit. That felt good to do. So find what feels good to do. Notice what you're spontaneously working on. Even if you don't think it's the actual work you're doing, if you're just doing it anyway, then pay attention and let go of limiting beliefs and make the decision with your whole body, with your experience, not just with your verbal reasoning. Yeah, bullet points. I've done it. Great. And those last 2 points are tied together because limiting beliefs often show up in the body as bodily tension. That's just like a fact of how the human organism works. Maybe all bodily tension is, in some sense, a limiting belief. Like, I don't believe my arm goes past this point, so I'll hold it back from going to this point, even though there's other muscles pushing it out, so they're in tension. But yeah, like, the mind and body are deeply connected, and something you don't want in your mind ends up in the body. So sometimes releasing a belief that is stopping you doing the thing that makes sense to be working on is just really simple. It's just like breath, relief, and sometimes it's like a bit weird in your body. Like, sometimes there'll even be like a bit of shaking and crying and like weird stuff. That's kind of normal. And if you have the limiting belief that everything important happens in the verbal reasoning and the body's not part of it, then you are preventing yourself from releasing other limitations on you. So, like, get rid of that one first, I guess. Or, like, it's going to have to go at some point. Yeah. But other examples, so when I started trying to make roguelike games, I was conceptualizing them as similar to the roguelikes I'd played. And so a belief that I had was that they had to be quite large. And once I stopped believing that and just tried making one on quite a small grid, I found that it was possible to make them. But before that, I'd been starting making them, and I wanted to have made one, and when I was working on them, it didn't, I get stuck, it wouldn't go somewhere, and yeah, the jam context can be great for just trying working on things, allowing yourself to work on something that you don't believe is allowed to be your main project, because it's just for a week or just for 2 hours or whatever, so you can suspend that belief for a time and convince yourself that it's just temporary, and then sometimes after having done it you realise this is actually what I want to be working on, so that belief can go forever. That's, yeah, so I think that's really it. Just, and obviously this is I'm relating this to how to choose what game project to work on, but this is generally how to make decisions in life. Find a decision that feels good to make with your entire self, and yeah, you might already be doing it. Just notice. Just notice.